I guess my question for you, Alexander, is so as I think the most conservative person on this panel, uh, so I agree with you on a human level. We should definitely be connecting with each other and humanizing each other. So I love what you're doing with the show. But when it comes to kind of the description that Dave gave, like I think, some conservatives might say that sounds like a chalkboard scratch in the sense of like, well, that's just backroom deals, coming together, backslapping, that's just growing government even more. And it reminded me of a speech that George Will gave at Brigham Young University, which, he's no fan of, Trump populism, but it was an interesting speech. And I think it was pre-Trump even. And he said, if compromise is, I don't want to spend anything, that's zero. And I want to spend 100. And if the compromise is always 50, that's in the middle, you're always going to be spending something. So therefore, you will always be losing as a conservative. So how does a conservative ever win in the sense of like, let's not grow government, let's have fewer regulations? And so consensus isn't necessarily something that conservatives, just by their very desire to slow or like have more freedom, you're always bound to be Charlie Brown with Lucy and the football, right?
I appreciate what you're saying in the fiscal realm. It's a fair point to make, what you're citing from Will. To Dave's point, these kinds of backyard barbecues in which Republicans and Democrats used to interact, from what I understand, they don't occur anymore. So there's always going to be an annual reconciliation of the budget. And there might be multiple reconciliations over the course of a year where you have to roll your sleeves up and dig deep and ultimately prioritize what you're going to spend on. One of the things I point out, Kerry, in the episode with Governor Lujan Grisham is that when we pay our taxes each year, and to my mind, that's actually maybe more of a universal form of our citizenship than voting. I really do wonder, do more of us pay taxes than vote? Probably.
That's not optional.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd all be not here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it should be like Australia. I think you should get fined $20 if you don't vote. But that's another conversation. Go ahead.
And that's a fair point. And a fine, I think, would be probably the better choice of discipline, both for not paying taxes and for not voting. In any event, in this episode, I think you'd appreciate this, Kerry, with Governor Lujan Grisham, I said, well, to her, the normal reaction of a lot of folks when they pay their taxes is they just want to thank you. And more to the point, not only do we deny them a thank you, an emoji, some kind of poem, something to make them feel happy about their country and services that they're paying into, we don't lay out the expenditures. Someone was recently telling me when they watched the episode with Governor Lujan Grisham that Senator Coburn had proposed some advanced transparency that was basically the foundation of this kind of an app where you could, log on and see the discretionary expenditures at the municipal, state, and federal level instantly. And, along with the thank you that the government's giving you in response to paying your taxes each year, there is a pie chart illustrating what the expenditures are devoted to. And then further, in the spirit of your point, Kerry, about participatory democracy and populism, there is a mechanism to then launch a petition, launch a town hall, be it virtual or in person, but have a real way to channel your energy that's not mean tweets or X's or whatever they're being called now, or just defamatory commentary, ad hominem attacks, the stuff that we know that to date, a lot of the political hate has degenerated into. So I'm all with you, Kerry. I think that we should not think of participatory democracy as some kind of alien or scientific concept. That's how, in reality, the folks who attend political rallies can govern their municipality and their country ultimately. And I don't think that's a liberal or conservative notion. It could be considered a populist notion or a Republican or Democratic notion, small d, small r, in terms of your own involvement in making the decisions about where money gets spent. And in that, and I proposed that to Governor Lujan Grisham, and she said, yeah, when New Mexicans file their taxes or when any Americans file their taxes, they ought to get this. They ought to get a thank you, and they ought to see what they're spending into the system and what they're getting out of it.
Well, and I would say too, I'm not sure what era Carrie is referring to when she talks about all these conservatives that want to reduce spending, because you look over the last 50 years and when did spending, the deficit, and government employment go up? You guessed it, during Republican administrations. So I'm not, my theory is all politicians like government spending. The Democrats just admit it.
Yeah.
But I do think this lack of even basic engagement has been a contributing factor in, if you look at, the basic stuff. Okay. Congress has to pass a budget every year, right? There's 12 resolutions that have to get passed. This is the stuff that, people like David Obey of Wisconsin and these old guys who ran the budget committee for seemingly decades said, look, we have a job to do that we need to do. Then we can talk about the other stuff. And they're not even doing the job that they need to do now. I can't remember the last time that, and maybe you folks can help me out on this, that the resolutions have been passed on time. So to me, it's just basic human interaction. It's very hard to work with people if you don't know them and you innately mistrust them. And every piece of information you're hearing within your echo chamber is reinforcing that. So I think it's kind of a combination of all these wrong things happening at the right time that has created this just level of dysfunction that really worries me, because to be candid, I think our nation has never needed a system, has never needed stronger ideas, stronger leadership, and more creative politics. And I think our system has never been less able to provide them. And that is usually, absolutely. I'm not writing the U.S. off. People have written the U.S. off many times and we've come back, but it's certainly a major red flag.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and Carrie knows me. I'm a glass that's half full person. So for me to say that is, it must be pretty serious on my mind.
Yeah, no, I love that idea, Alexander, with the letting people know what your money is going to. Absolutely. And I think it's interesting too, hearing from, when someone, let's say they just graduate from college or just finish high school, and then they might be super progressive, and then they get their first paycheck and they see how much of it is going to taxes. And a lot of times they kind of sober up, but I think taking that a step even further and letting them see what the money's going to, I think a lot of people might wake up even more. So, and Dave, I agree with you, but I think that's the whole point of a lot of the conservative base. They would agree with you. They would call them rhinos, the people who made all those deals that you're talking about. They would call them rhinos. And then also when Bill Clinton got his balanced budget, that was in large part because of Republican Congress that was forcing that discipline on him. But I think
when there's a Democrat in the White House, then conservatives are all in on reducing spending. It's just when there's a Republican in the White House, it's not quite. All of a sudden, that enthusiasm, that passion, just seems to dim a little bit for some reason. It's a mystery I'll take to my deathbed.
We don't hear dinos spoken of on MSNBC.
Yes, really.
How is that, Carrie?
I think because Democrats are more disciplined, and they and as Dave said, they're at least open about admitting they like to spend. So you are always spending at the end of the day. So you're a Democrat, you're supposed to like spending. It's just a question of how much. But
again, deficits of the Barack Obama, his first administration, slowest increase in spending since Eisenhower. Clinton, yes, it was with the Republicans. We had a balanced budget. So It's not just the members of Congress, it's the people, it's the presidents themselves, whether it's, big government conservatism from George W. Bush or Trump going totally off the rails. Reagan at least tried. He vetoed 22 spending bills, and he tried to get spending under control. He gave up in the end, but at least he tried. There was none of that from W or Trump.
Yeah. Well, Alexander, as you can see, Dave and I have spirited debates